Me personally, well, first I want to thank Joe, and I want to thank Chauncey because, obviously for this to even be possible, we all had to be on the same page about it. But like they both said, it never felt right not being home, and through it all, I found my way back, and just fortunate to be back with the group that I was with prior to leaving, to be a part of a great situation at home. And I'm just excited, and really, really thankful and appreciative of the door being open for me to come back, even with me being hurt. And, it means a lot to me to not only play for this organization again. I never wanted to not be playing for this organization, but to be back in this community, that I'm most familiar with, the familiar faces, all of the things that I've been connected to, even during the time that I wasn't playing here the last 2 years. So it all just feels right. Usually when I have to make a decision, I put a lot of thought into it. I ask a lot of questions to the people around me, but this was a decision that wasn't hard at all for me to make. And, the people that I know love me and care about me, it was a easy piece of advice for them to give. It was easy for them to support. So, like I said, I'm just thankful to be back. And it just feels like the perfect situation at the perfect time. So I'm just happy to be back.
Hey Rip City, this is Scoot Henderson, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 164 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl, and that was Damian Lillard at his reintroductory press conference on Monday at Moda Center with Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups. Dame discussing his return to Portland after signing sometime this weekend, officially rejoining the Portland Trail Blazers for his second stint after a couple years away in Milwaukee. We'll discuss Dame's reintroduction here in Portland and what that means for the team, the rest of the team going forward. I thought, more so than kind of Dame being reintroduced, I felt like that press conference was more kind of about his thoughts about the current team and how he's going to fit in, particularly this year where he's not able to play. We'll also talk about the Trailblazers signing Blake Wesley to a contract. Trailblazers now with 15 roster spots on the team, the max. Usually Blazers go into a season with 14 guys. This year going in with 15. Preseason schedules announced. Most of those dates were already kind of known because of the other dates that other teams had announced, but the Trailblazers officially announced their 4-game schedule. And Pup City is this weekend at Moda Center on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, as I mentioned, while it probably wasn't necessary to reintroduce Damian Lillard to Portland, a place that he spent so much time in and is such an important figure, maybe kind of, if he would consider himself an Oregonian at this point, which I think he would, possibly the most famous Oregonian, I would imagine. But either way, it was less about kind of this is Damian Lillard and more about, one, just the thoughts from both the team and from Damian's side in terms of that reunion and the decision for both sides about why they decided to make that happen. For Dame, I think he sees where this team is at and feels really confident about what they are going forward. For the Blazers, I feel like they're in a spot right now where they've already kind of taken some steps and have changed the way they've played since Dame has been here. And now they feel like adding Dame is just a straight up value talent play that when he is able to play is really going to add what they're already doing here in Portland. And I think kind of the way that Dame views kind of his next season, I think was really the most important part for me. And, where his mind is at in terms of how he's going to spend his time as he's not able to play in the 25-26 season. I guess there's always a possibility that he rehabs and is able to get in at the end. He was kind of a little cagey in his press conference about his prideful self and wanted to maybe get back out there. I think it's very unlikely that Damian Lillard plays in the 25-26 season, just because it just doesn't seem like it's probably going to be worth the risk. But what it sounds like he is going to be doing is really, conducting himself as a member of the team who would be able to play, but otherwise can't. So, being around for every practice and shoot-arounds and road trips and games, obviously. And, Chauncey joked about him being, the NBA's highest paid assistant coach. And, I think that's a really good sign because, sometimes, players come into a situation and there's an assumption that veteran guys are going to come in and want to be mentors and want to kind of help younger guys, in some respects, kind of replace them. And not every guy is like that, and that's all right, I don't think it's necessarily the responsibility of every individual to come in and say like, "Hey, I'm gonna help the young guys here," and when you are still a player and have your own goals still. But Dame is not like that. He talked about him feeling like he's a much better version of himself when he has other players and other people to mentor and to pour into, as he often says. And so he's going to be able to do that this year with the Blazers, and I think that's a really good thing for this team, particularly for guys like Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp. I think to have a guy of Dame's caliber and expertise on the team, working with those guys alongside with the Trailblazers' new coaching staff, which has a lot of talent on it as it is as well. I think you feel really confident about their ability to help mentor and grow the young players on Portland's roster. And then you add in a guy like Jrue Holiday to that mix as well, and we're going to hear from Dame kind of talking about Jrue. He spoke at his camp in Beaverton on Wednesday about kind of Jrue Holiday and that matchup and his thoughts on Jrue throughout the years. So to have a guy in Damian Lillard and a guy in Jrue Holiday who are going to be able to really not only help Portland's players, their younger players, kind of grow and develop and help them through some of the tribulations you go through as a young player in the NBA. Oh yeah, and by the way, they're also really good players too. And so well, obviously this year Jrue Holiday is going to be on the court, so that's a great thing. But Dame is going to be out this year. But then when you're adding Dame as a player and as a mentor, and particularly as an offensive threat, and you have Jrue Holiday as just an elite defensive player, and also a guy who's a pretty good offensive player in his own right. And then you have Scoot and Shaden and Tumani and Denny and DC and Rob and Jeremy and Matisse. There's a lot of talent on this team, and it's gonna take a little bit of time for them to come together and mesh, and but I think we've already seen that they've already started to make a lot of those strides that I think you want to see out of a young team, particularly on the defensive end. And so I think in that press conference, I think we got a really good sense of kind of how Dame views himself and where he's at in his career, and particularly how he's going to approach, this next season. And for him to really come out so strongly talking about Scoot and wanting to be a part of Scoot's growth. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Jrue Holiday. And when you have a guy like Dame and a guy like Jrue, obviously Dame is a guy who, has made his career on being a just a dominant offensive player, a guy who can change a game, almost through his will on the offensive end, who, has put in so much work and preparation to get to where he's at now. And being a guy who, again, just throughout the league knows that like one of those guys that's really changed the way that teams have to defend in the NBA because of their range and their ability to score. To have a guy like that in Dame, and then to have another guy in Jrue Holiday who's kind of the same thing, but on the defensive side, just an elite wing defensive player, one of the best defensive guards in the history of the NBA. To have those two guys and their experience and, the successes that they've had individually with teams on good teams and on not so good teams, to be able to bring that not only on the court, but in the locker room and from a mentorship perspective, I think is really going to do great things for this team. And, so to have Dame, in the locker room, at practice, at shoot around, helping coach these guys up, seeing what he's seeing out there and helping guys better understand how they can get theirs in the NBA. And then to have, a guy in Jrue doing the same thing on the defensive end and positioning and knowing what it takes to compete on that end, and the intensity and the preparation and the focus that you have to be a great defensive player in the NBA. And then to have it with Chauncey and his coaching staff, like the obviously Chauncey really kind of made his bones as a two-way player as well, and with a coaching staff that has really, I think, taken a step forward in terms of kind of some of the talent and some of the expertise that they bring, guys who have had success on all levels, internationally, domestically, in the G League, in the NBA. Like it just really feels to me like it's really starting to come together. And does that mean, they're going to be contender this year? No. Does that mean they're going to be a playoff team this year? I think they feel like they can be a playoff team. I think they're going to have to go out and show it. But I think you can't say that there's not a whole lot of reasons to be really bullish on this team going forward. Like it just seems like the trajectory is consistently upward right now, and adding talent and the right kind of talent at the right positions that are able to play on both sides of the ball. Again, I just think there's a whole lot of reason to be really optimistic going forward. And I felt like Dame, even though he's not going to be playing next year, in that press conference, really kind of laid out the reasons for that, from the way the roster's been constructed to the mentorship piece to, the what this team means in Portland and what they're building here, and the way that Joe and his staff have really been smart about utilizing their assets. And oh yes, by the way, still having a lot of assets to use going forward. Again, I just think that there's really a lot of cause for optimism. And I guess just to kind of put a point on it, I also think too that, you look at the roster and where they're at and kind of their record last year, and you wonder going into this year, like what's the plan? Like, is this going to be another rebuilding year? I think for Joe to come out and just straight up say, like, it's time for the Trailblazers to start winning. Like, I think that tells you everything you need to know about kind of how this team views themselves, where they think they're going, and what they feel like their next step is. And, again, the Western Conference is incredibly difficult. It seems like it gets more and more difficult every year, which seems impossible, but it's true. So it's going to be difficult to have success in the West. And that goes for basically any team. So that's not to say that they're going to necessarily get there this year, but I think there's a lot of reason to be very, again, optimistic about where they're going. I think that they're going to need a few things to probably break their way. But if that's the case, like I think this team, in terms of being competitive in the Western Conference, it is a lot closer than I think maybe some people, at least nationally, think they are. So, I think that press conference really did a nice job of kind of wrapping everything up a little bit in this offseason, in terms of kind of letting everyone know where the Trailblazers feel like they're at in their rebuilding process. And while there's still a ways to go, I do feel like they feel that they're a lot closer than some think, and that returning to being a competitive team in the West, and maybe not a team that's going to be competing for championships next year, the year after that, but sometime in the not too distant future. I think that, there's a fair amount of cause for that. And I feel like that press conference, once again, was a really good indication of that. Well, even though the press conference did go on for a while, there were still a few things that we didn't get to that I was kind of curious about. So I was able to get Dame after the press conference to ask him, to pitch him a few more questions about some of the things that I think I was kind of interested in hearing him talk about, and I'm sure that some of you are as well. So we got two clips here today, a little different for the briefcase, but it's different days here in Rip City, so might as well mix things up here a little bit. So this is Dame talking after his press conference about Scoot Henderson and kind of the way that he approaches mentorship. And again, I thought he had a great quote in that press conference about mentorship and about feeling like he's his best self when he's working with guys and helping along other guys in their careers. And he's going to really have a chance to do that with Scoot Henderson. And so, he talks a little bit more about Scoot and being enthusiastic and excited about the prospect of helping Scoot along in his career, both on the court and kind of like just what it means to be a point guard in the NBA. And then his thoughts on Yang Hansen as well. Like, I didn't want to necessarily pitch him a Hansen question in the press conference because Yang is a rookie, and who knows how much he's going to be playing next year. I think there's a pretty good chance that he does end up playing some rotation minutes, but not entirely sure about that yet. So I was curious if Dame had any thoughts about what he had seen from Hansen. He absolutely did. So here's Damian Lillard, real quick, talking about Scoot Henderson and his relationship with Scoot and how he wants to approach that going forward, and his thoughts on Yang Hansen, particularly his play at the Las Vegas Summer League. You had talked about kind of your role next year and about mentorship and feeling like your best self when you have someone to kind of put something into it and help. Can you just talk a little more about that, particularly as it might relate to Scoot? Because I think a lot of people saw the move and wondered what that means for Scoot, and it sounds like for you, it's like you really want to be a part of his growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I have always taken pride in, and that I've enjoyed a lot, and that I feel like I've gotten something out of, is when I'm able to pour into another young player's career. And being able to do that for another young point guard, somebody with the type of ceiling and talent that he has, you can tell that he works extremely hard. You can tell he loves the game. And it's a lot that I've experienced, being in the NBA, I've experienced the top of the game, in every way. And it's just a lot to share. And for me to be able to come back and be a part of his growth and development, not just on the floor but off the floor, and how to navigate a lot of things that we experience as NBA players, I get something out of that too. So, it's going to be a pleasure for me to do that too.
I know you spent a lot of time in China throughout the years with Adidas. Any thoughts on Yang Hansen after Summer League?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know much about him before. One of my assistants in Milwaukee, my first year, actually coached him, I think, in China. And he spoke highly of him as soon as they picked him, but I hadn't, seen much. And then watching him during Summer League, I was like, this is a real player, especially with the way the league is now, with a lot of these bigs that teams use as a hub to, play make and kind of facilitate the offense at times. And he got like some swag to him too, like he got some stuff to him, and I think that's good for a rookie, especially somebody coming over that's not from the United States.
Yeah, because they're going to get tried, and so to have that mentality probably helps.
Yeah, he got some personality on him, but you can tell the way he plays and how he goes about it. He has like some real confidence.
Some great stuff there from Damon, and really nothing necessarily. Not surprised by any of that, but it's just great to hear kind of the approach that Dame feels like he wants to take with young players. Because again, I think particularly next year, not being able to play, like that is going to be, I think, his primary role on this team is really being a mentor and an assistant coach on the bench. And I think that all these guys could really benefit from not only Dame's expertise, but just the way that he approaches the game and life in the NBA. I feel like Dame has a perspective that I think is just a little uncommon in the NBA. And I think that's a place where, I think his influence is really going to be felt. And I think that's going to be really important in that season while he's not able to play. Next up, let's go ahead and hear from Dame at his camp today in Beaverton. Every year Damian Lillard has a camp. It's always very well attended. He was still having that camp even when he had moved or been traded to Milwaukee. I think they maybe skipped one year because of COVID. But other than that, they've had that camp every single year. It's always great attendance. I will say, too, if you go to the Damian Lillard camp, you are going to meet Damian Lillard. Like, I know some other players' camps are different. If you go to Dame's camp, your kid is absolutely going to get to spend a little bit of time with Dame. And Dame is out there on the court. He's not able to do as much as he usually does because of that injury, but he is still out there, and he spends all day long at those camps. So if you've been considering going to one of those camps, Blazers have a lot of good camps too. I know Scoot's got a great camp coming up here as well. Dame's camp has always been a good one. I always recommend people, if their kids are at all interested in basketball, go to the Damian Lillard camp, because they're definitely going to get something out of it. And what I got out of it was we got to talk to Dame during his camp about Jrue Holiday, kind of that video of him walking through the locker room, which I thought was great, kind of talking about the emotions he had while he was kind of going back to the Trailblazers locker room. First time in a couple years he had done that. His relationship with Jrue Holiday, they've had a lot more of a history, I think, than people realize. His thoughts on teaming up with Jrue. Dame maybe finally breaking down and going to the Oregon coast, which is something that towards the end of his career in Portland the last time, starting to get a little crap for, and rightfully so. So Dame maybe relenting on that a little bit. Also talks about kind of some of the scholarships he does for his camp, which I think is really cool. The other part too is that the Dame is always really about being inclusive and making things approachable for people despite, what their background might be. So I thought that was pretty neat as well. So here's Damian Lillard at his camp on Wednesday discussing a whole host of topics.
I mean, obviously you have the reception that you kind of see online, but seeing the reception from the kids over the last day, what has that been like?
It's been great. They've had a lot of energy and just excited. A lot of them, as soon as I walked in yesterday, it was like, my bad, I mean, it's your mic.
I'm out of practice.
They all walked up and was like, man, you back, So they was all excited about it. Last year when I did camp and I wasn't on the team, that was like the main question they all kept asking, like, are you going to come back? Are you going to come back? And I didn't see it happening this soon, so I was like, maybe one day, but it happened a lot sooner, so they have been excited.
Jersey Day today, but pretty cool to see. A lot of kids kept that letter O in the black and red, man.
Yeah, it's not like I was here for a year or two. A lot of these kids have had these jerseys for a long time. So it wasn't a surprise, but I think due to the circumstances, a lot of them, have worn their jerseys today.
And making sure this camp is still accessible for so many, too. Your Respect Schools got scholarships, kids here, BPI, Special Olympics here with the Unified Partners. Yeah. Why is that important to you to still make this an accessible camp for so many kids to come in here?
Because I wanted to be the type of experience that all kids can remember. You know, I know everybody isn't fortunate enough to afford what it costs, but I mean, the camp coaches that we hire, the time that we put into it, I'm here all day. You know, we got to be able to compensate people properly so that they invest into it the way I want them to for it to be a quality camp. So even with that being said, I still want it to be accessible, like you said, for everybody. So we do a lot of scholarships, like you said, Black Parent Initiative, SEI, through my Respect program, and many other people that I just might know somebody that want their kid to come to camp, and I might just have at least 20 kids where I'm like, just bring them, and when they check in, I'll be out in the back, and I'll just get them on the list and get them on the team. So, I mean, we do a lot of that stuff so that all kids are, you know, able to have the experience.
How tough is it for you to this year not be able to participate in some of the on-court stuff with the kids because of the injury?
I mean, it's different because I'm usually just so involved. You know, I demonstrate a lot of the drills. A lot of times it's a segment with me specifically for about an hour or two toward the end of camp where I'm able to get on the court and show them specific things, and I kind of do it in a way where like I'm working out in front of them. I think another big part of camp is like I usually get here at 7 o'clock, and when they all come in, I'm toward the end of my workout and they get to see my last 30 minutes. So it's just not doing so much talking and demonstrating, but they are able to see a real example, you know, of how I train and what I put into it. So those parts of it I haven't been able to do, but you know, I still think it's a lot of ways that I can make it a quality camp still.
Does this year's camp make it, this year's iteration, does it make it a little bit more special considering you back in a Trailblazers uniform? I mean, what's the feeling like considering you actually back in town as a player?
I mean, honestly, it was only one camp that I wasn't in a Trailblazer uniform. It was like one summer that I wasn't on the team. But I think it makes it special just because of, like I said, everything that's taken place over the last week, you know, just being back here after being here for over a decade and then kind of being on a new team for 2 years and it being so unexpected, you know, every part of the whole situation was just unexpected, and it just happened so fast that, you know, even the parents and outside of the campers are just like, you can just feel the energy, you know, the people are excited and more than anything just happy, you know, to have me back here.
That video of you walking into the locker room has gone pretty viral. Can you just kind of explain the emotions that were going through you as you walked in there?
Yeah, it was just a great feeling. You know, it felt very familiar. I don't know, in my adulthood, I haven't had. It's been pretty consistent, you know, pretty stable in everything that I've done. So like being here for so long and then being in Milwaukee for 2 years, and it just wasn't, you know, that type of feeling. You know, I had a good 2 years, you know, a great organization. Everything was done proper, and, you know, it was a good situation. I think it just wasn't what my full adulthood and my career had been, you know, like this is where I built my life and my home and everything. So walking back through those doors and walking back to my locker was just like, you know, these types of things just don't happen in the NBA. So having that experience, you know, I wouldn't say I was overwhelmed, but I was like, I guess, feeling a lot of emotions because of that, you know, like, man, it's really, I never wanted to leave to begin with. So now that it's happening like this, it was just like, man, this is almost too good to be true.
Has this felt like a crazy busy week for you, going from the signing to the presser to the camp the very next day?
Yeah, like I said, it all happened really fast, and you know, I feel like by the time I get home the last 3 or 4 days, it's like almost time to go to bed. You know, I got to put my kids down, eat, take a shower, and then I get in my bed and I want to watch TV or something, but I just end up asleep. And then the next day is here and I got to get going again. So I haven't really even had the time to kind of sit back and even take in everything that's taking place. So days happening fast right now.
The number one thing that I think fans have wanted to know since the news broke that you were coming back, are you going to get out to the coast finally?
What's funny is I was doing rehab, and my PT, who I've been with for years, he was like talking about going out to the coast and with his wife and all of that, and I was just like, I guess now that like it happened this way, I guess I should probably get out to the coast and just have that experience since I haven't done it yet. So I'm I'm definitely planning on doing it. I might as well, man. So.
One thing we didn't get to at the press conference, your thoughts on Jrue Holiday and that signing and being a teammate of his after playing against him so many times.
Man, that's one of the things that I'm extremely excited about because I think obviously I'm going to bring experience and leadership and just a vet who's been on the floor. You know, I've done it for a long time, but being able to play alongside another guard that's similar, you know, has won 2 championships, has a lot of experience. He's been an all-star in the NBA. He's been around a long time. And his personality, you know, who he is, I think it'll be great for the team, especially combined with what I'll bring to the team because of those same reasons. And I remember when he was leaving New Orleans, like me and him we talked about him coming here. Like that was like a real discussion. Like we was like trying hard. So I've always been a fan of Jrue. I've always wanted to play with him. I think we'll play well beside each other. And, you know, once he came here, I was like, man, he was like, can I wear your number? But he was joking. I was like, nah, you can't wear my number. And it was just like a joke. But then, like, as soon as I was waived, and obviously he knows that I live here and built my home here and stuff. So he just, like, sent me the eyeball emoji. And I kind of knew already, like, I already knew where I was pivoting to when he sent it, but I just didn't want to say nothing too soon. And here we are. So.
And you played with him on the Olympic team, too.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't he the one that told you had to get the core surgery? Wasn't he the one that was like, he had that? And
yeah, we talked about it like during the Olympics because I was trying to explain to everybody because I couldn't practice once we got to Tokyo because it was just killing me. And he was just like, yeah, like it's going to stay that way. Like we talked about it for like every day. We'd sit there and talk about it. And that was kind of what pushed me to say like, all right, eventually I'm going to have to do it.
Not surprising after that Pelican series that you were interested in teaming up with him because, man, I still got a lot of feelings about that one.
Yeah, that was like one of the more like hurtful moments of my career, you know, just like ultimately it was a moment that, you know, I had already been an all-star a few times. And I think I was first team that year, actually. I think I was first team All-NBA that year, but that was a turning point in my career where, you know, you reach that point where it's like, are you going to take another step and, you know, make another leap, or are you just going to like stay in that space? And I made my mind up and I did, you know, all of the things that I need to do. And the next year I, you know, made another jump. But that series and that moment definitely played a significant part in me, you know, growing a little bit more after that.
There was a report that you actually reached out to Jrue after he got traded to Portland and spoke like fondly of the franchise. Is that true, and what was that conversation like?
Yeah, he was, because when I lived in Milwaukee, I rented his house for 2 years. So I actually had been renting his house for the last 2 years. So we talked a lot. Like I was complaining to him about the Wi-Fi. Like it's a clip online of like, I shake his hand, we played them in Boston, and we had an interaction, and people was like, well, and we was literally talking about his Wi-Fi at his house. So he reached out just about like areas like to live in and stuff like that. And a little bit about the organization, and I told him like, I love Portland. I live in Portland. My family's in Portland, and it's a place when people come here to play. It's probably raining. They're here for a night. You know, it's gray skies. You don't really see much. I was like, but I'm from California, and I've been living here for the last 13 years. So I think once you get here, and you get on the ground, you know, you learn to like it. Or love it in my case. So that was kind of what I shared with him.
Really good stuff there from Damian Lillard. And one of the things that I had mentioned, you know, at that press conference was it's just so nice to hear Dame again. Like he has such a great way of speaking, and like I'm jealous of the way that Dame is able to talk. You know, I do a lot of talking for a living, and I wish I was as smooth and dialed in as Dame is when he's speaking, because he just presents himself so well. He's got such a great way. He really answers your questions, which, you know, you understand why some guys are a little more reluctant or maybe kind of give you canned answers. Dame listens to your question and really gives you a thoughtful answer. And that's something that you really can't say about a lot of guys. So that's always something I've really appreciated. And it's something that's been really nice to have back in the fold. Because, when you're doing this job, it's helpful when you ask a guy a question for him to kind of sort of answer that question. And Dame always does that. So really great to have him back. Really great to just hear his thoughts on a lot of different things. And again, I think a lot of reason to be excited, not because of what happened in the past, but because where this team is going forward. Hopefully, Damian will be able to get out to the Oregon Coast at some point in time as well. And if he does, I definitely suggest he stops by Spirit Mountain Casino, where you will get an unforgettable entertainment experience at their Top Golf Swing Suite. It's tough to say. Enjoy your favorite virtual games on an immersive big screen, now with discounted midweek rates. Grab 5 of your friends and book your bay now. Spirit Mountain Casino, Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. As I'd mentioned, most of the Trailblazers schedule, preseason schedule, if you really looked for it, you could have found most of the games because teams do their announcements of preseason at different times. It's not nearly like the NBA full season schedule, which is all announced on one day. Various teams you can announce your preseason schedule basically anytime you want. NBA doesn't really care. So Trailblazers announcing their preseason schedule on Monday, starting off October 8th at Golden State Warriors, 7 o'clock start time for that one. 2 days later, back home versus Sacramento Kings, October 10th, 7 o'clock for that game. 4 days later, also at home, hosting the Golden State Warriors, 7 o'clock start time at Moda Center, October 14th, and then wrapping up their 4-game preseason schedule, October 16th versus the Jazz in Utah, 7 o'clock start time to that one as well. Not sure about broadcast for any 4 of those games. I wouldn't be surprised if those ended up on KUNP and Blazer Vision, though not entirely sure what the case is. Wasn't specified in the release, but I'm guessing at some point in time we'll get a little more information on that. But 4 games for the Trailblazers at preseason. 2 games at home, 10th and the 14th, 2 games on the road, 8th and the 16th. And should be an interesting preseason for the Trailblazers as well. First chance to really kind of see how this team looks with the departure of DeAndre and Ant and the addition of Jrue Holiday, Donovan Clingan moving into, I think, probably starting role. We'll get a chance to see kind of where Yang Hansen is at and what his role might be. So should be a pretty interesting preseason for the Portland Trailblazers. So definitely worth checking out those games wherever they're made available. I'm sure we'll get more details on that at some point in time. But the 4 games Trailblazers playing at preseason, October 8th at Golden State, October 10th versus the Kings at Moda Center, October 14th versus the Warriors once again, but this time at Moda Center, and October 16th at the Utah Jazz, all those 7 p.m. starts. Signing Damian Lillard as a free agent wasn't the only signing the Portland Trailblazers had this week. They also signed Blake Wesley to, it sounds like, a 1-year deal. Let's go ahead and get to the press release here. The Portland Trailblazers have signed Blake Wesley, who was selected 25th overall in the 2022 NBA draft by San Antonio. Wesley, 6'3", 190 pounds, has spent each of his last 3 seasons with the Spurs, appearing in 156 games, 4 starts, averaging 4.3 points, 2.4 assists, 1.5 rebounds, and 14.3 minutes per game. The South Bend, Indiana native, Wesley spent his freshman season at Notre Dame and earned second-team All-ACC and All-Rookie team as he accrued averages of 14.4 points, 2.4 assists, 3.7 rebounds, 1.3 steals, and 29.3 minutes in 35 games, 25 of those starts during the 2021-22 campaign for the Irish. Blake Wesley, just another kind of long, lanky defensive presence from the guard position. With Dame out, they feel like Blake is going to be kind of a change of pace guard for this team. I think much in the way Delano Banton was last year. And a guy who I think they feel really confident can come in and contribute something to this team in a reserve role. And a guy who, I think it was maybe a little bit of surprise that he came out after 1 season at Notre Dame. And now that he's been in a good organization with the Spurs, they obviously, have moved on. But I think a really nice value signing for the Trailblazers. He's going to wear 99 according to one of the uniform accounts on Twitter, I guess you would call them. So yeah, another guy who just fills out that roster at that guard position. Again, another guy who I think is really going to make his bones defensively, an athletic long guard as well. And a guy who, again, I think the Blazers really just putting an emphasis on players who can come in and defend. And I think they feel like Blake Wesley can come in and give this team something. And, I was talking to, we had a little bit of a chalk talk with Andre and Mike Schmitz a few nights ago with a kind of a smaller group of people. And, they just kind of talked about some of the reasons why they're enthusiastic about that signing. And, just another guy who they feel like, is maybe a little bit undervalued and really still has maybe more to show in the NBA. And they're hoping that he's able to do that with the Trailblazers. So, I think a smart signing there to get them to 15. They went from only having 13 guys, a week ago and still needing to sign at least one player, if not two, before the start of training camp, to now have a completely full roster, 15 guys on the roster, I think, and they have two-way guys in Sidy Cissoko and Caleb Love. So I guess maybe they have one two-way spot open still. So I guess still potentially a spot to fill there. And obviously they need to fill out the remix roster. But as far as the Trailblazers go, Blake Wesley, the 15th man on this roster, signed this week. And my expectation, I don't know that they'll do necessarily a press conference. I know we've had some questions about Jrue as well. Jrue was already here, came with his family. I think for vets, that point in their career, you only get so much time with your family in the off season. And so to even burn a couple of days by kind of coming back and having a press conference and then leaving, like, guys got vacations planned. They got things they like to do. So, I mean, at this point in time in the off season, we're getting to the point where, once August comes, everyone kind of tries to finally get a bit of a break. So not sure if we'll be doing a Blake Wesley press conference anytime soon, along with Jrue Holiday. But at some point in time, those two players will be introduced before training camp, and we'll maybe get a little more information then. But Blazers signing Blake Wesley as their 15th man. And finally, if you're a Trailblazer fan who has dogs or loves dogs, I would strongly advise you head out to Moda Center this Saturday for the Pup City event presented by Tavo. Trailblazers are excited to bring together the dogs of Rip City at Pup City, presented by Tavo, on July 27th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted at the Rose Quarter Commons, a ticketed 1.3K dog walk. I don't know that my Francis can get 1.3K, but we'll try. And festival will feature 20 human-friendly and dog-friendly vendors like Tipsy Ice Cream, Portland Pet Food, and Tavo. Feature local nonprofits and dog rescue One Tail at a Time PDX will be on site with adoptable dogs, spreading awareness of their mission to give rescue dogs a chance to know the comforts of a loving home through adoption and foster families. Those of you who adopt dogs, you are doing great work. I have purebred dogs. I should adopt more dogs. The next dogs I have will absolutely be adopted mutts. But I have been a purebred dog guy throughout the years, but I've tried to be responsible about where I purchase them from. But if you want to complain about that, I completely understand. You should adopt dogs. It's a great thing to do. Animals in general, adopt them. They're great. And also, too, a lot of times purebred dogs sometimes kind of have some health problems that you don't necessarily have when you have less purebred dogs, mutts, if you will. In addition, the portion of each ticket will also go towards the efforts to take care of dogs that they rescue. Tipping off at 9 a.m., attendees can head straight to the registration to pick up their Pup City tote bag, dog ball, and raffle ticket included with the registration. Then enjoy music by DJ OG1, Trailblazers DJ, and shop around the festival. Tavo will be joining in on the fun, contributing a prize to the Trailblazers raffle for all registered guests and having travel carriers on site for pets to test drive. That's a pretty cool thing. I might be test driving a pet carrier. At 10 a.m., the 1.3K walk around Moda Center will officially start, led by the only cat allowed, Trailblazers mascot Blaze the Trail Cat, with Blazer dancers helping guide the way. I think I will also be there helping guide the way as well. So you want to come out and say hello, I would love that. Bring your dog. Attendees are free to walk the loop as much as they'd like or return to the festival afterwards to continue the fun. With the sunshine and heat in the forecast, it is going to be hot this weekend, folks. It's also hot in my upstairs right now. You might notice I'm sweating a little bit here because the ventilation is not great, but anything to get this podcast out. So since it is going to be hot this weekend, water stations will be available for pets and their adults and their pups alike. I don't call them parents because you're not that dog's parent. You're that dog's friend who takes care of it. I am a friend to my dogs. I am not their parent. It's one thing I always bristle at. I'm not a parent. I'm a friend. I have friends who just happen to be dogs. I'm not their parents. They have parents. They're not here, but they do have parents. That's not me. I'm just their buddy who takes care of them and pays for all their stuff. So also, if you are 21 and over, 19 Acres and Elysian Brewing will be outside Dr. Jack's with samples. That's a nice way to cool down as well. Learn more about Pup City and purchase a ticket. Fans can go to trailblazers.com/Pup City. Head on over, get a ticket. You get some cool dog swag. You might win a few things. Fun little walk around Moda Center as well. Should be a fun event. Saturday, July 27th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, new edition next week, most likely. Though it's going to start to calm down here a little bit, Rip City, one would assume at least. But hey, I thought this week was going to be calm too, and it's been anything but. So when there's more news to cover, we will cover it here on The Briefcase. But until then, Thanks so much for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I am Casey Holdahl. Go Blazers.